Oh,
Fortunately, my wife and daughters are trying to get something that coordinates with the rest of my outfit.
I'm all for that. I'm all for that.
Well, good morning, guys. I'm just going to mute for a moment because I'm getting a few things in order.
Same here, Janelle.
No problem.
Hey, good morning, Amy. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
All right, I'm great. Great.
Good.
Have my iPad all here. I just love this thing. And it's so nice for me because I work off a laptop and now I can keep my agenda off to the side and take notes on it. And I can't tell you how much that excites me. So
All right, good.
it's like little things, right?
That's right. That's right. No, I think it's pretty a handy tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good morning, Paul.
Morning, Janelle. How are you?
I'm really great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Kind of this foggy morning.
Yeah, right? I'm happy the snow is going away though.
That's true.
I know some people like it. I think I was meant to be a southern southern states person in the winter here.
Yeah, I was counting on the rain so I wouldn't have to shovel. So I know I was a little lazy, but
No problem.
yeah.
Well, good morning. I'm just going to mute myself again here.
Okay. Thank
Good morning, Commissioner Bookland.
Good morning. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
Good.
I see Laurie's with us. Good morning, Laurie.
Morning.
Thank you. Just wanted to test your audio. Good morning, Commissioner Havel.
Good morning, Janelle. How are you this morning?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Oh, doing pretty well. You ready for Thanksgiving?
I am ready to roll. I got my 20-pound turkey.
20 pounds. Wow, that's a nice size.
It's big.
Yeah.
Especially I was telling Michael, my husband bought it for 3 of us, so we'll be eating turkey for quite a while.
And that's what happens when you let your husband buy the turkey.
He did
I
a
was
fine
thinking,
job.
Janelle, that turkey's probably big enough where it requires a COVID test before it comes into the
Oh my
house.
gosh. I was so proud. He did such a great job, because Thanksgiving, you have very certain things that you need to make the feast, right? And you get very specific on a brand or something, and he executed it all perfectly. I just failed to tell him buy a smaller turkey. So, well, we'll have a lot of turkey. It's all good. I think I will just mute myself for a moment here. Commissioner Hobble, I do want to let you know from the last meeting, I did update the decorum rules.
Okay.
And I want to make sure, I just want to confirm with you and Michael that I do have this correct. I'm asking that people use their cameras if possible, and that it's okay to turn them off if they're having technological troubles, is what I was told. So is that correct for updates to the decorum rule?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And probably the only other one, Janelle, is that staff will have their live cameras on if possible during presentations.
Good morning, Alan.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning. How's the sound?
It's perfect. Thank you much. Good morning, Commissioner Wilson.
I am here. How you doing?
Very good. Very good.
Good.
Good morning, Commissioner Swanson.
Good morning, Janelle.
Thank you. Coming through loud and clear.
Janelle, Amanda's here, but I'm signed in as Lynn accidentally.
Okay,
We'll just
thanks,
have-
Amanda.
We'll have 2 Lyns today.
No problem. Good morning, Commissioner Eskridge. Good morning, Commissioner Eskridge.
Good morning, Janelle.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioner Murphy.
Good morning, Janelle.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning.
Thank you. I can hear you well. Thank you very much. Good morning, Commissioner Foster.
Good morning, Janelle.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, it's 8 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. I think we have all commissioners except for Ezra. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so hopefully Ezra will join us. Welcome to all of our guests. I didn't, quite frankly, see many other than staff. I might have missed somebody. but welcome to any guests that are there. Janelle, you want to go through the virtual meeting guidance, please?
Certainly. So good morning, commissioners, members of the public and staff. To help us have a smooth meeting, I'm going to review just a couple decorum rules for all. So number 1, please ensure your mic is muted unless you are speaking. Number 2, please state your name before speaking. 3, in general, please have your cameras on if possible if you're speaking. This includes staff that is presenting today. You may turn your cameras off if you are experiencing technological challenges. And number 4, just as a reminder, the public chat has been disabled, but if you can still send messages to the host if you need to. So those are the decorum rules as updated from the last commission meeting with the topic of Zoom protocol. So as you notice, there's a few new things in there regarding the camera. And that's all I have. So let's have a great meeting, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Janelle. That takes us to announcements. Do you have any announcements, Michael?
President Hovell, I do not have any announcements this morning. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And then that takes us to 1E, introduction of Ben Seibel at Network Administrator. Is Laurie going to do that?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yeah, hello, I'm Laurie Dunn. I'm the Information Systems Manager. I'm here today to introduce you to Ben Seibel, our new Network Administrator. Ben comes to us from PC NameTag, where he was also a Network Administrator. He started on October 5th, and in just a short time, he has become heavily involved with technical support for some of our unique COVID-related challenges. He's jumped right into the mix and started to investigate and design new ways to automate some of our manual processes. In the near future, he will become the administrator of our Office 365 SharePoint installation, and he will be leading the IT Citrix support for the process control system. Ben and his wife, Kate, live in Mount Horeb with their 4 children. In his free time, he enjoys snowboarding, biking, and constantly working on his old home. We are very glad he's here. Please welcome Ben Seibel.
Well, welcome, Ben. I think everybody's clapping for your welcome. But, okay, thank you very much, Laurie. Do we have any appearances by the public? Okay, I don't hear of anybody. Then that takes us to the consent calendar where we have items 3A through 3F. And there are a couple sanitary extensions, Key Lane, and then the East Side Sanitary Sewer in the village of McFarland, among a few other things. Do we have any questions on any of the items on the consent calendar? Okay.
Wilson, I'll move approval of the items on the consent calendar.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Wilson. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. Murphy.
A second by Commissioner Murphy. So it's a motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Murphy to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Motion carries. Okay. So that will take us to the study session on Agenda to Go, the packet that we all would have received last week, I think it was sometime. And is Janelle, are you doing that or is?
I am. I'm co-presenting today, so I get to kick it off.
Okay.
All right. So good morning, everyone. My name is Janelle Werner, and I am a subject matter expert for today's topic. I am one of 3 project teammates who have been working on the agenda management project, which loosely translates into being all about the commission workflow. The other members of the project team are project manager Amy Bublitz, who will be giving the demo portion today after I'm finished. And then the other person is the subject matter expert, Lynn Coleman, who works with me symbiotically every commission meeting to ensure that things run smoothly and efficiently. All right, come here. Well, that's a bummer when it doesn't want to work. There we go. Okay. So what do you do when you find yourself suddenly working from home in the middle of a pandemic? Well, you look around and you decide to tear your existing workflows apart to look for better efficiencies and effectiveness. So while it's true, we've been working rigorously over these past 9 months on this project, the truth is the effort stems back closer to 2 years that this project has been in the making. Sorry, I have my notes page here, so you're gonna hear a little paper rattling. So in 2011, a more formalized approach to commission meetings was implemented. And as the years have went by, the workflow has become more robust. There has become an increasing need to automate and streamline the workflow. With the development and growth of the district's records management program, the resource team saw an opportunity to explore and seek solutions. So the on-base agenda management product was identified as a proven solution that is currently being used by some of our customer communities, including Fitchburg, DeForest, and Middleton. The team benchmarked with these organizations and further explored the technology through a series of discovery meetings. And with the vendor Naviat, we recommended this project to senior management and it was approved. So the on-base agenda management solution provides the ability to automate workflow approvals. It secures docs for us, tracks revisions, and it simplifies the agenda meeting and minute creation. Agenda management offers a benefit to you, the commissioners, which you'll get to see today, by way of Agenda to Go, which is available to commissioners exclusively for meeting preparation. The solution provides a secure and easy way to access a website for meeting content, and the project overall cuts cost and time spent managing and preparing for last minute agenda changes and for the meeting. So there are 4 phases to the project. The first phase is agenda management, and we have implemented this already. The agenda management implementation is the in-house work of workflow approvals, document security, revision tracking, and simplification of the agenda and associated content. Phase 2 was the implementation of the agenda and packet out to a new website with an improved user interface and enhanced navigation. So that's what you've noticed when you've been accessing the packet online now, that change in look and feel. 3 is Agenda to Go, which is what we'll be discussing today. It's the commission's piece of the puzzle, basically. It's your way to be able to access a copy of the agenda and be able to mark it up, add your notes, highlights, etc. And then the 4th phase, which we're looking to implement in the first quarter of 2021, is a minutes module. So all pieces of this will integrate together really nicely for us. So we are almost through step 3 right now. So what is it? It's a tool that basically is going to allow you to highlight, add notes, bookmarks, etc. in the packet. I can tell you that I installed this on my home iPad, and I too have a district iPad last night. It's really slick. So I hope that many of you do give this a crack, because I really think that you're going to like the interface and how things display for you. It's pretty slick, and you'll get to see that shortly. And with that comes a great point. We threw the textbook at you, meaning that 36-page document that you got. We wanted to put all of the information in your hands. It's meant to give you all the resources that we have available to us. But today in the demo, you're going to get a really pared down version on how to use this, essentially the Cliff Notes version. We have done screenshots of the Cliff Notes version, and we're also going to be putting this on our website just so you have an easier to look at reference. But I think that you'll find that it's pretty intuitive and that you'll like it. So think of this 36 pages as, we don't know what all questions you could have, but it will answer basically any questions you might have on this tool. So it might seem like a bit much, but it's basically, here's the textbook in case you have any questions. So the other point to this is I've been being asked, do I have to use Agenda to Go? And the answer to that simply is no. It's optional, meaning that if you still want to access the packet online, you are able to just do that if you don't feel comfortable using Agenda to Go. But I think you'll find as the weeks go on and more people are using that, it's just such a nice tool that you might want to give it a whirl. So we do hope you do. Everybody is set up with the technology, including key staff and legal support, and obviously all the commissioners and us people that support the meeting as well. So I think that you'll really enjoy it. And with that, I am going to turn this over to my counterpart, Amy Bublitz, who is going to give you the demo and basically, like I said, the Cliff's Note version on how to use this today. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Amy Bublitz, and I am the Records Program Administrator for the district. So what I'm going to do today is give you an overview of Agenda to Go. As long as everybody can see my screen there, I've got the login screen showing. So if you have your iPad and you download the app, this is what you'll see. You'll log in. On the login screen here, you've got 3 icons on the bottom. This first one over here on the left is just an indicator that you're connected to a network, to your wireless network, whether you're at home or you're somewhere else. That's the indicator there. The next icon over is just language, if you want to change the language. And then the gear is for setting, which I'll go through at the end of the presentation here. So you log in, and then you'll get to this is the default screen for meetings where you can search for a meeting. You can put in dates if you want to. Otherwise, you can just hit this search button and it'll bring up any meetings that are out there ready for you to download. So I've got my October 15th meeting here that I've downloaded. So it's ready for me to view. So once I click on that, here's my the date field if you want to select your dates, and then you want to download meetings. This is an indicator that it's ready to download. It has not been downloaded yet. So you can download these to your iPad so you have that version available. So you do not have to be connected to the internet all the time to get access to your agenda packet. So it's kind of nice that you don't have to be connected. Download it if you want to. You don't have to, but that's an option for you. And then once you get into the packet, there's a number of things that you can do. So here you see this little orange flag here. This tells you that that's the one that you're currently viewing. So all the documents associated with that agenda item are going to display down below. And the paperclip indicates that there's attachments associated with that particular agenda item. If there's no paperclip, there's nothing's going to show up down here. And then this indicator here is telling you that there's been edits made, that you made edits to that document, whether it's a sticky note or you wrote something on it, made a bookmark, it's going to indicate that for you so that you know you've done something with that particular document for that agenda item. So as you click on these, this little orange flag is going to change, it's going to move with you. So it's a nice visual indicator that to let you know what you're looking at. So then once you open up a document, you can view it, you can pinch and zoom, so you can expand it, make it larger, make it smaller. But then you've got these 4 items up here in the upper right. So the first one is the pen, the marker. So you've got a pencil, a marker, eraser, and then colors. So as you can see, I just took the pen and circled things. I highlighted something here. And then you've got your undo and redo buttons here if you want to do anything with what you've marked up here on this page. Next item over is your notes. These are sticky notes. So you click on that. Initially, you'll just say no notes. And then you click this plus up here in the upper right to add a note. So I'm just adding a note, typing in. You can color code them if you'd like to. And you can add multiple notes to a document. So once you've added a bunch of notes and you click up here on this, it'll list them all. And then once you just tap on a note, it'll take you to that note. You can also tap on the note. You see this one here is purple. If you tap on it, it'll open up. A separate window will pop up, and then it'll display any notes that you wrote on that particular note. To delete these notes, you swipe from right to left. You got the option to delete it or edit it. So they can do that. That's how you get rid of them. And then the other thing you can do, which I can't show you because it's just a screenshot, but you can hold that note and you can move it around the page. You can put it wherever you want. Next item over is your bookmark. So this is different from notes. So notes, you can have multiple notes on a page in a document. A bookmark is just that, it bookmarks a page. So if you had a multi-page document, like 20, 30 pages, and you wanted to be able to skip to page 10, you could put a bookmark on there. And just like notes, it will just list them all, and then you can click on them, tap on them on the screen, and it'll take you to that page. So it's a good way to reference different pages on a large document. And then here's what the bookmark looks like for the page. And then up here on the far right is a search. So you could search by word, or you could put in a page number and it'll go to that, the results of that. And then over here on the left, so this particular agenda item had multiple documents associated with it. So this gives you a quick way to get to all those documents rather than going back all the way back to the full agenda. So once you click on that, you're going to see all the associated, so you can quickly go to the next document associated with this particular agenda item. So it lets you move quickly from one document to another. And then this bottom one here shows you that you have a bookmark on that particular. Again, to delete, just so you know, you can delete a document if you wanted to, or you can refresh it. So one thing you should know is that this is particular to your iPad, so nobody else has access to it. You're not deleting it from the system, you're just deleting it from your view. So you can always reload the document if you accidentally delete something from your iPad. Then you'll always check to confirm that you want to delete it. And then a couple other options here is the reload and then these color buttons here. So if you want to color code your agenda items, you would tap on it like this one I've got here. I've got this one highlighted, and I just tap the green and it highlighted it green or red. And then if you want to take out the color, you would just tap on white, back to the default. Reload is if Janelle or Lynn would send an email saying there was some major change to the agenda packet since you downloaded it, and let you know that you need to reload the agenda so that you get all the current versions of whatever attachments might have been updated. So then again, it'll confirm that you want to reload the data for that particular meeting. The other thing you can do here, now this is adding a note again. So this is different than the sticky notes. This would be, if you want to take notes during a meeting, possibly, this is more like having a notepad where you're writing a series of notes for the whole agenda, particular agenda item itself. So this is by agenda item, but it's just one big screen for all your notes for that particular meeting item. Versus before it was a particular document and there were sticky notes, and you can have multiple sticky notes for that document. Oops, back. Oh, so then this is these are all these notes. So this down here in the lower right, this is going to display all the notes that you had on those agenda items, this big screen here, like your notepad. It'll take you to those notes. And then over here, this little button here in the lower right, it doesn't have a lot of function. The only thing that it really does for you, it gives you a full view of all the agenda items. You can't go into an agenda item from here, but you can just see everything. Like you wanted to see everything at a glance. You just want to quickly review what's coming up on the agenda and just see it in one view. That's what this does. It really doesn't give you much more than that. Settings. Once you click on that here, down below in the lower right, that gear, what you're going to get is the system configuration. You can turn these options on or off to remember your username, to download all documents, which you may not want to do because you don't know how many documents there are or how big it's going to be. It could run into an issue. Have a network connection problem. You may want to just download things as when you want to run a search for upcoming meetings immediately, you can do that. And agenda line preview. I have it set to display all rows at once, rather than if you move this sliding bar, it would just give you options just to show one row or two rows of agenda items. It's probably easier just to see all rows that way. Just see everything at a glance. Storage tells you how much you have available on your iPad. They vary depending on the version. I don't know how much you got, but it'll just show you that how much storage you have available. And then it does time out after 15 minutes. Just delete all data from the device. You want to be careful with, because if you do delete everything, it's going to delete all your documents you've downloaded, all your notes, anything that you've done with the agenda items. So you may just want to delete things individually once you are done with an agenda and you don't want to have it anymore on your iPad. Just delete those things. There's also a help option here. So this is pretty much a duplicate for the most part of what that document is that was sent to you. So it's just online here if you want to refer to anything or find information about how to use Agenda to Go. And that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions about how to use it?
Okay, anybody have any questions? Very nice.
Amy, before the commission weighs in, Amy, what happens if the packet is reloaded and the commissioners have already placed notes and bookmarks on their packet? What will happen in the kind of the integration?
Your notes and everything will still stay. It'll just be a different revision. It'll show up as another item. It was just kind of like the original will show below the new version, but your notes and everything will still be there.
Yeah, thank you. Very nice device to be able to make the comments, and I give a thumbs up. I see Tom doing that. So yeah, very handy. So anybody have any questions? Okay, I've got one question. When you talked about the downloading, one of my questions that I had written, I don't know, I didn't even check to see how much storage capability I have on the iPad here, but do you need to, if you're going to be using the highlight or the sticky note thing, do you have to have that downloaded, or will that, if you do that and you don't download it, it'll still reappear if you close out and you get back in? I think it's kind of similar to Michael's question.
Yeah, it'll, you don't have to download it to do the markup. It'll still save it. Yeah, it's not necessary to download everything.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, very nice. I know we had wire or paperless packets when I worked at Fitchburg for years. I don't know if when I was there, they had started going to this on-base system, but they didn't have this part, which is really nice because you can make the comments and stuff like that. Okay, well, thank you very much.
I just would like to, this is Janelle. I would just like to let the commissioners know that we do intend to follow up with you in first quarter to see if you're having any challenges with this. So while we put this meeting out there for you to kind of play with, we're officially launching this, the 12/17 meeting. So we hope that you give it a try. And if anybody is having any issues with installing the app or getting on, or you just want to ask a quick question, please do feel free to reach out to me, and I will work with Amy and Lynn to answer any questions you might have. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Yep, thumbs up. I already did some of the notes prior to the meeting, So the question I asked was on my note. So, okay, we'll move on to B, 4B, study session on strategic finance roadmap and commission guidance. So Bill, are you leading this?
I am leading this, and I am doing the little ritual screen sharing activity that we have to do every time. There we go. I'm hoping that you see a slide with an indecipherable picture on it.
Yes.
Thank you. So I'm Bill Walker. I'm Director of Strategy. And this is a study session. And I just remembered I'm also supposed to turn on my camera. Just a moment, folks. We're going to keep learning. There we go. Good morning. We have two tasks in this session. First, I'm going to tell you what's going on in the area of strategic finance. And the point here is that there's a lot going on, and I'd like you to be aware of it. I am not going to try to explain details today, and I don't expect you to remember them. But I do hope you'll remember the big pieces. And then second, we will discuss how the commission can monitor the performance of this work. So the point here is that monitoring is a commission duty under policy governance, and that any monitoring of strategic finance should be part of that overall monitoring effort. We want to help you succeed in monitoring, and we really need your guidance on how to do that. Strategic finance has three parts to it: spending, revenue, and timing. And an organization has to do all three of those things well. Spending asks the question, what should we buy? What should we invest in? And how should we make those decisions? Revenue asks, where do we get the money for that spending, and by what means? Timing is about when we get the money, and the choices are in the past by saving up, the present using current receipts, or in the future by using debt to put off the need for revenue. Timing is sometimes overlooked or rolled into the revenue question, but where to get money and when to get it are very different questions and need different analysis. To be strategic, we need a diagnosis for each area. That's a concise understanding of the situation that suggests the way forward. So I'm going to oversimplify a lot here, especially with spending. With spending, the district needs to do more with information and analysis, because spending decisions have gotten harder, and you've heard these reasons a million times: regulatory requirements, asset issues, and so on. Regarding revenue, our situation is about trying to simplify. Our current revenue method does its job of getting revenue, but it does it in an inefficient way that creates uncertainty for payers. And with timing, the situation is about doing more with the timing tools that we've neglected in the past to get better outcomes. You've seen that already because we're paying more attention to balance management. Continuing to be strategic, we have several guiding principles for how this work is done. These are not goals. They're like the guardrails on a highway, keeping us on track. On this slide, I've put all of the points that were in the agenda report, but I'm only going to highlight three. A principle for spending is to explicitly and formally evaluate spending options in terms of district outcomes policy. So spending is always done for a purpose, to support district outcomes ultimately. And we need to at least estimate how much the various options would achieve those purposes. Otherwise, we can't be sure that we're spending wisely. A principle for revenue is to listen to payers. Payers have interest in predictability, transparency, fairness. And our revenue method, whatever it is, needs to attend to those interests. And a principle for timing is being unified. For instance, the individual funds balance management policies need to work together. Diagnosis and guiding principles alone achieve nothing. We need actions, and they need to work together. They have to be coherent. We have many things planned here. So for example, under spending, we're doing reliability centered maintenance, RCM, and shifting to a new computerized maintenance management system, CMMS. Why are those highlighted under spending? It's because per the diagnosis, to decide what to buy requires information and analysis. A huge part of our spending is for assets, and asset information lives in the CMMS, and it's kept current as part of proper maintenance practices. Until we do those things right, we cannot make good spending decisions. So we're focusing on those things kind of as a foundation for the spending part of strategic finance. For revenue, the highlight here is that we'll start a project sometime next year to review our revenue options. I have no specifics because we haven't started yet, but we will follow the guiding principles for the work, including listening to the communities who pay. And for timing, my highlight is that we've already started by increasing cash support for the capital program, and that'll continue. So again, I don't ask you to remember any of the details of this, but I do hope that the table itself serves as a reminder and kind of a cheat sheet for you as we come back and talk about more of this stuff. Presumably, you want strategic finance to succeed, and you want to know that it's succeeding. So let's turn to monitoring. As I said, monitoring is part of policy governance. The governing board sets policy direction by saying what outcomes are desired and by putting limits on the chief executive. It delegates the work to the executive, and then it monitors results. Monitoring completes the circle, if you will. Accountability cannot happen until the board has decided how it will know that outcomes are being met and limitations are being complied with. How will you know? The key is to make a link between outcomes and limitations on the one hand and monitoring information on the other. Monitoring information should relate directly to outcomes and limitations. That's easier said than done. But that principle is the anchor of policy governance monitoring. One thing to note here, the board can't delegate monitoring. It can delegate the gathering of monitoring information, but deciding what to monitor and how to monitor it, and then reviewing that information can only be done by the board. Our outcomes and limitations policies have several points related to strategic finance. So one example, outcome 2C, charges for service are justified, adequate, equitable, and predictable. The framework I just showed emphasizes justifying spending in several places because it's an outcome we have to achieve. Another example, executive limitation 2F. The CED shall not fail to comply with industry standards regarding protection of the district's assets. So that whole idea is like deeply embedded in the framework. This means that outcomes and monitoring for outcomes and limitations as such would cover strategic finance. And a question we're going to discuss in a minute is which parts of the outcomes and limitations policies would you like to monitor first? There can also be value in monitoring very specific parts of strategic finance. For instance, you could monitor the use of debt. Metrics like that can be simple and clear indicators of performance. On the other hand, I do have a caution. In my experience, too often organizations make an under the lamppost error in their metrics. They look at things that are easy to measure instead of things that are important, like the drunk looking for their keys under the lamppost because that's where the light is good. Nonetheless, you may want to pick a few valuable strategic finance metrics, and that's the second discussion question. There are two practical monitoring issues. How often should monitoring reports be reviewed. You could do it on a schedule, annually, quarterly. You could do it in conjunction with other events. So for instance, we amend the budget and include a monitoring report. And then what form should they take? A simple dashboard, a report, maybe even a presentation. So I've listed 4 discussion questions here, and there's an overarching 5th question, which is, what are your thoughts on policy governance monitoring generally? And I would like to start the discussion with that one. So I'm gonna take the slides down here, and I'm also gonna switch to kind of a facilitation role. My hope is that this is a conversation among commissioners, and I'll be taking notes, but I'm not really the audience for this discussion. I think your colleagues are. I'll pose questions and invite people to speak as needed to kind of keep us on track. So I have an alphabetical list next to me, and I didn't confirm that Commissioner Bookland is here. Are you? And if you are, would you be willing to start us off with your thoughts or your questions or concerns about policy governance monitoring generally?
Yep, I'm here. And yep, I would be willing to do that and start my video here. So I think my first question is the monitoring. I'm wondering about the frequency of it and how, and I think the details of how that might occur. So if we could talk a little bit about the frequency and how that might, the process, I guess.
Anyone have any initial thoughts on frequency? One option, of course, is to just do it once a year.
And I'm just curious as to how the commission has done that in the past, how often it has been monitored and the process previously.
I guess I'm the one calling on people. Commissioner Estrix, your hand is raised.
Thank you. Well, my question or perspective was going to relate to Commissioner Bookland's in some ways, because I'm wondering about the interaction with the budget and our annual budgetary process, and how and whether that might be also an opportune time to look at these monitoring questions.
Well, I had similar thoughts to Sarah, but I was thinking probably doing it prior to the budget, a few months prior to, so that we can see what things look like that set the stage for the budget. I don't know if that's quite what you're saying. I'm sorry, I missed a hand up. My screen went away for a second, so I had to try to find how to get it back. So anybody have any other thoughts? So I was thinking at least that once a year, a few months before the budget, and then possibly when we have specific items on that are amending the budget or something like that, that we would have a little more detail at that point in time too. In terms of how we've done it in the past, I don't know that we've ever really had formal monitoring of any of our expenses, but we probably should, since it's one of our fiduciary duties. So I think that's why we're discussing it here today.
Commissioner Swanson, please.
Thanks. So to me, monitoring means that you're keeping track of trends or information, different metrics, measurements, how things are going. So the next question in my mind is, what do you do with that information? Are there points where something, do you have tolerance limits? Do you have parameters, things that would signal a problem, things that we would recognize as something where we need to make a decision? So like, kind of basically, what do you do with that information that you are monitoring? What would be the next step? You know, how do we make sense of the information that we're monitoring, and when would it be something that we should act on?
Yeah, very good point. I think we have to give some thought to that. Ezra, I see your mic is on. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I tried raising my hand, but I don't know if it's visible. I'm just thinking through the processes we go through every year, and I think this would be a friendly amendment to what President Hovell said. We before we get the budget, we get the capital improvements plan in draft form, and there's a listing of things we've decided or we're thinking we want to decide to do with a certain kind of revenue with debt. At that time, it'd probably be good to go over some of these metrics and then to really talk about whether those things belong on the debt financing plan or they belong on the other kinds of financing plan that comes later in the budget. So there's maybe an opportunity there. And then there's another one, I think, as Tom says, sort of before we get too deep into the budget process on sort of the total picture. So I don't know if that means twice a year, but maybe it does. Just a thought that comes to mind as I mull all this over.
I'm gonna pull us away a little bit from metrics and timing, partly because the conversation has moved to the very specific measurements. And I want to pull us back a little bit to policy governance. So in the car there, I pulled out what seemed to be the most relevant issues. And I mentioned a couple of them. I think ultimately what I'd like to steer you to is thinking about how you're going to monitor at that level primarily, as opposed to very specific debt issues. And one reason for that is you can be darn sure that staff are monitoring those issues all the time. That's how we assemble these items. So what thoughts do people have about items that are already in the policy book?
Grant, you have your hand up, and then I think Sarah's next. Do you have comments on that part?
I think it's connected. Bill will steer me right, I think. But I guess in terms of looking at the, like, I'm probably focused most on the outcomes as a starting point. The two that you highlighted, I think maybe it would be helpful to even think of monitoring outcomes and monitoring executive limitations as a little bit different. I think of the executive limitations are like, we really just need, we sort of need a red flag if one of those is being breached, but I think the outcomes perhaps are more of a routine monitoring task. The second thought I had was, I look at those and they seem really connected with this question of kind of owners and sort of our role as monitoring on behalf of the owners. And so I think in order to inform timing and the details around how we do that monitoring, it would be helpful to also think about, it's our role to monitor, but I think it would be helpful if we are able to translate that monitoring into communication to the owners as well, right? So that if we're doing our job and we're monitoring and what we're monitoring says everything looks good, I think it would be helpful to be able to pass that information on to our owners as well. And both of those outcomes seem to be really focused on information that we should be perhaps sharing regularly with those owners. And so I'm not really familiar with what kinds of routine sort of reports we might have that would go out to those owners, but maybe that's a concept we'd want to consider that would inform kind of both the manner and the timing of our outcomes monitoring in the form of, okay, if we do that, could that also produce a sort of a report in some way to our owners?
Okay, Sarah, you're up.
Yeah, I want to make a broader point perhaps. So we get a lot of detailed information about spending and revenues right now. So detailed that we can look at checks that are being written, right? But we don't always pull that up into a higher level of performance on how we're tracking, even annually to budget, I think, in a way that's not so detailed that you'd have to look through basically the balance sheet every couple meetings when we see it. So I'm wondering if there's something to and same thing with some of our spending, in that we get project updates where we're writing the final check for a large project and we authorize that money, but we don't always think when we're doing that how that fits into the broader context of our overall spending and priorities. So I think we could do a little bit to just integrate the monitoring into the processes that we already get so regularly, but connecting it to the bigger picture of our priorities and tracking and monitoring, so that it becomes a little bit more real. Because I don't remember who made the point, but someone was saying, right, we can get a lot of information. Maybe I think it was Mary, but what are we doing with that information is so important. And if we can't connect it to the bigger picture on policy governance and our role in monitoring the outcomes, it makes it more difficult to make that connection.
Yeah, I agree. I think, when we get some projects and they're over the estimated budget line, and we typically say, okay, well, that's being offset by something else, but we don't know how that tracks all the way down through the course of the year. We're not seeing like a full spreadsheet. The other thought I had is sometimes that we have, as Sarah mentioned, we focus a great deal on specific elements, like you talked about getting down to checks on the expense side. But one thing we don't really keep track of well are some of the revenues. And I don't necessarily mean the revenues coming in from the rate or rates, because those are variable, but revenues that we get from other aspects, particularly the interceptor and the treatment plant connection charges, because we can approve a project, say in 2020, but that payment may not come in until 2021. And so, we always have these kind of delays, or it may even come in later, right? Because, if you get a recession and all of a sudden, boom, everything stops, our approval's good for what, like 3 or 4 years, then, it comes in much later. And I think that's just kind of all of an important aspect in terms of, because we depend on that revenue for other things on the expense side when we get to interceptors and things like that in our treatment plant, particularly now that we're doing treatment plant upgrades. How does that revenue stream that we get, how does that tie back into the expenses that we're now undergoing with the treatment plant upgrades? So I think that's, and one other thing I'd like to comment on is that, are there any other aspects of revenue that we could be looking at that we're not? And the reason I make that comment is that we've heard pretty loud and clear from our customer communities that they wish rates to be stabilized. And I know we're going to be talking at some point about, we've done some of that too. We raised rates a little bit one year even though we don't need it all, in order to stabilize down from a larger expenditure in future years. But are there other aspects that we can do to bring in revenue that would help in that regard? And it may not be a lot of money, but are we doing all we can in terms of new revenue sources in order to, like user fees or something like that, which the ICC and the TCC are meant to be, to try to affect our rate increases? Grant, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one other concept, which is this, Sarah kind of alluded to it, but this question of sort of specificity or level of detail. And I think for me, a broad goal would be, if we could identify, what indicators can we identify, what measures can we identify or create that would sort of that are both at the highest level, but that also can give us the necessary sort of early warning sign. And then, once we identify what that is, then sort of kind of everything underneath that would theoretically be something that we don't need to see the detail on, until and unless we get into a yellow situation at one of those higher level indicators. So, and I have no idea what that means, and it might be different in different areas of oversight, but I think that to me is something I would think the commission is in agreement on, that we don't want to get into the weeds only to the degree that we need to. So I think finding that appropriate level, what is the oversight that we can where we can fulfill our jobs but really not get too detailed until and unless there's a need to.
I'm going to continue my theme of pulling us up to outcomes and limitations and pose a question to you. This comment or this point, by the way, slightly disagrees with you, Commissioner Foster, about the difference between outcomes and limitations policies. You folks represent owners. Someone is going to come to you and ask or point out that we shall not fail to comply with industry standards regarding protection of the district's assets. And you have to say, we're monitoring this and we're confident that that is true. How are you going to do that?
So I got a question. When you say district assets, do you mean the physical assets or the monetary assets? Or both?
I'm going to throw that back. This is a commission level executive limitation policy. And I will grant that staff wrote it or contributed to writing it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's your policy. And an owner's going to ask you, and you have to answer it.
Well, I think one way we do that is through the audit process that occurs annually. The auditor comes in and checks. So that's that's checking over the fiscal side. I think the physical side's a little more detailed, actually, because we've got our asset management and other aspects that we're implemented and working on. And obviously that, bad things can happen, like with that leak at that one pump station, but that's the nature of the business. So that's kind of my response. I don't know if anybody else, Brad, you have a comment?
You may be muted. Commissioner Murphy, were you speaking?
Brad, you took your hand down. Did you want to speak or not?
Yeah, I lost the meeting connection for just a second. Sorry about that. As I read the staff report and thought about the selected outcome and executive limitation policies that you attached to the report, I frankly started to get a headache. To me, I think that trying to identify the appropriate indicators that would allow us to monitor each of the executive limitation policies and the outcomes it'll be a challenge. And I think that, when in the report it said that, I think it said you were establishing a staff team to start to work on this. I think that trying to establish an acceptable or appropriate level of monitoring for each of these is something that it's going to take a lot of effort. I think that the two outcomes, it's difficult for me to think about what types of data could be provided that would allow us to adequately do that. And other than talking with our customer communities and owners and doing surveys, and when I look at the first one, district customers are confident that we're delivering appropriate benefits at an acceptable cost. Well, I mean, that's kind of opinion from our owners. So survey them, I guess. I'm not sure. And the second one, charges for service are justified, adequate, equitable, and predictable. Yeah, I would be very interested in seeing what staff would think are appropriate indicators that would allow the commission to track how we're doing in relationship to that outcome over time. So I guess my best advice is to start to pursue the listing of what indicators would allow us to monitor each of these, and maybe have a discussion around those. And then at some point we can talk about what the appropriate frequency is and timing during the year. I'm particularly in favor of using dashboards rather than long written reports. So if we can pursue that, I would be all in favor of that. So those are my thoughts. It's a lot of rambling, but that's what I'm thinking about.
Okay, very good, Brett.
Commissioner
Grant?
Commissioner Hubble, I just wanted to jump in here just quickly. I think we don't have an expectation that the commission's going to come up with these indicators today, and it's just the area of interest. And we can then look at what other best practices there are, and coming up with something that would meet your needs. And I think the idea is that none of us want to be overwhelmed, that we want to do things where we can where you can make good decisions. So I just want to reassure you there.
Okay, Grant, you have your hand up, and then Mary.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to reassert that I think for me, I see a very significant split in the outcomes and the executive limitations in two ways. One, the executive limitations are specifically about the CED, and having been working on that process and continuing to work on that, to me, I mean, we have monitoring at least annually in that form via that tool. So, we could certainly do these things, and if the feeling is that that's insufficient and that, we need more frequent check-in on these to ensure that they're, not being violated, I think that, to me, I would use that existing framework. Seems like the appropriate place to get into detail there. I think the other thing is that they're all framed in the negative, right? So it's different to monitor the absence of some activity as opposed to the outcomes, which, I would assert we have to produce something rather than just producing a report card that says yes, no problems. So I think they really are different, both in terms of kind of how they're applied and I guess just how they're applied. I think the other thing is with the outcomes, the first one is really explicit, and I appreciate what Brad said. That one says that we're actually supposed to monitor that our customers are confident. So that kind of brings me back to that question of how, what is the reporting that we're doing for them? And then I guess, consequently, how are we evaluating their satisfaction with that? And so I think that is something that we should consider and we should talk about, because we really can't ensure that outcome is being reached if we aren't gauging their confidence. And I think outcome number two, perhaps it would be worth considering and update that to say district customers, or I guess district owners with our new lingo, believe that charges for service are justified, adequate, equitable, and predictable, because that might be something that's both more meaningful and more possible. I mean, for us to make the determinations, I mean, we can, but if ultimately this is about owners' confidence that we are monitoring, then, if they believe the charges are justified, adequate, equitable, and predictable, is probably as good of an indicator as anything else. So I think that both of those outcomes, we should be thinking in terms of hearing from our owners and using that as our way to monitor, and perhaps having the executive limitations continue to be within the framework of the CED review.
I'm doing the facilitator thing of getting us to think about wrapping up here, not rushing you, but Commissioner Swanson, and I also want to hear from Commissioner Wilson and Commissioner Clark if you have anything.
Yeah, just real quick. I think that not to say we wouldn't want any new ways of looking at this, but we already look at and review so many various pieces of information throughout the year, and there are already like the stakeholder meetings, and we review plans and budgets, and the dashboard that we see from Alan with how the plant is performing. There's a lot of information. I think my point is that it would be good to look at the information that we're already looking at and putting it into context and trying to align that with these bigger goals of monitoring overall. And like, how does this bit of information fit into this bigger piece that we're monitoring? How does this information fit into the bigger picture? And just try to be more aware of that as we go through the year.
Bill, my feedback for you and Commissioner Clark would be, I'm okay with staff communicating some options on some of these items also. Open-ended discussion is fine. I'm comfortable with that, but you know, we have a couple hours a week at the meeting, or a couple hours every 2 weeks, then a couple hours maybe outside these meetings. Staff is involved with this. They're doing this 40, 50 hours a week. So I'm okay with some options from a commission standpoint. We don't have to follow them, but at least they're a starting of a conversation that's a little more detailed, a little more focused when we get there.
Thanks, Ken. Tom, did you want to?
Yeah, it's Wilson. I'm right in line with Ken on that last thought. One thing that I did want to note is that I did raise my thumbs up there when Grant was talking, because as we were putting these together, people remember I got hammered for not wanting to see negatives in these comments. And it's nice that somebody pointed that out, that they should be positive. It seems to me that there's, you know, we could do a couple things. It would be nice to have some things laid out in front of us that we could have discussions on, again, as Ken said, rather than a little more open-ended. Although I think from staff's perspective, I think what you're looking for is, all right, what are you guys thinking before we throw things at you? And we do get a lot, everybody, I've been trying to listen, which is important. And I think sometimes it's better for me to listen than talk, because I won't shut up. I think that there are certain reports that we could get, almost a dashboard on some of the finances that we don't get. You know, you see it at other local governments and other private companies as well, where you'll get a lot of spending compared to budget. And, you know, it could be that you as staff and Michael, if you see something that's out of whack, you bring it to our attention. And that was part of what I thought we put all this together for, is there were certain things that, you know, we're depending on staff to bring us, and that we're not supposed to be overreaching with things. So I guess my comment is, from that perspective, we don't want to, I don't think we need to micromanage or overreach here, but it'd just be nice to get a little bit more, maybe, than just the checks and things like that with respect to some spending. And I don't know whether this is it seems like we review a lot of this annually in a couple different ways when we're talking about capital spending and in our budgets. So I don't know if it seems like we specifically look at a lot of these things every year. I guess the reason that I'm last is because I'm trying to listen and not add a lot, because I think that staff is going to come back with something that'll be helpful to us to have specific conversations about.
Okay, thanks, Tom. I just wanted to kind of summarize here that I think what we heard is that the staff should look at, besides coming up with options, look at our current information that we receive and how that fits within the our outcomes and evaluation policies. And as I think it was Mary that mentioned, we already do some of this outreach with our district meetings with our customers. And then I know Michael meets with the Cities and Villages Association annually, and some of that is within that. And I also think that we were talking about a tiered approach, that we have the dashboard at a more general high level, but following what Grant said, if there is any yellow flags or something like that, that we have the ability to delve more deeply into what the situation is. But I think most everybody doesn't want to, as Tom put it, overreach, or whether it might have been Ken. But so we do this kind of tiered approach, the more broad, but the ability to delve down more deeply. So I think that kind of summarizes a lot of what we had discussed. Is there anything else you needed, Bill?
I am very comfortable with all that. That was actually very helpful to us. You kind of gave us the green light to do some of this work. In the spirit of not overpromising, most of the, especially the financial reporting, will be led by a position that is not yet filled. So you won't be hearing from us for a while.
Yeah, I think you mentioned. Okay, are we all done with this item? Okay, I see the head nod. So that will move us to the study session on energy management master plan. And I think, Matt, you were going to be doing this.
Yes, I am. So I'm just gonna make sure I understand the logistics of sharing my screen here. And are you able to see the PowerPoint now?
Yes, Matt, we can see it.
Yes,
All
I can.
right. Let's get this fired up
Yeah.
and going.
This is, oh, you got it. I was just going to let you know you had your notes version on, but now we're good.
Yep, just a little bit of a lag here, I think. Okay, so we're gonna shift gears a little bit, talk about something a little bit different. So cleanse the mental palate here. We're gonna talk about energy management and the master plan we're working on. So I'm Matt Seib. I'm the process and research engineer here, and I'm the project manager for this project. So like I said, we're gonna cleanse the palate, and we're going to talk about outcomes policies. So I'm really glad actually that you all were talking about this just now, because I think the message here with the slide is just emphasizing how important these policies are for staff and how we're using them to focus our work and understand how to implement and deliver projects and activities. So there's a couple outcomes policies that are really informing and driving the Energy Management Master Plan project. The first one is policy O-1, where we are wanting to make sure our customers are confident that we're doing things appropriately and providing benefits to the public, to the environment, and to the economy, and doing it with acceptable costs. We want to make sure that our customers' wastewater is collected and treated in a manner that's safe, reliable, efficient, environmentally responsible, and forward-thinking. And I really want to emphasize the forward thinking here. That's really what this management master plan is all about. We want to be thinking about natural resource use and conservation. How much resource needs does it take to run the plant and our operations? Are we recovering resources? Are we doing it responsibly? And lastly, you were just talking about this quite a bit. What is the financial situation? Are our costs justified? Are they adequate? Are they equitable? Are they predictable? So this is a really great list of things, but as you were all just discussing in the last section, there's a lot of things. So how do we make sense of all of this? So previously, in preparation for this project, we had a study session, and we discussed with you this idea of a nested hierarchy. So trying to take those outcomes from our policies and sort of creating a hierarchy with them to make a little bit more sense of what should we be going after first, where are our priorities. We did this back in March 2018, so Commissioner Foster and Bookland, you weren't here at that time, so this is new to you, but for everyone else, you did see this at one point. You may not remember it, but that's why we're reviewing it. So let's review really quick. So what is the nested hierarchy? Well, we start in the middle, in the kind of the blue or the green circle, and we work our way out. So the idea here is We should always be ensuring that what we do meets our regulatory obligations, so meeting our permit. And then we can allow ourselves, after we're confident that we've achieved that, we can think about added benefits, added things like how can we do better at protecting the environment? How can we ensure an even greater reduction in risk? And then we can think about renewable energy after that. So this hierarchy isn't meant to be mutually exclusive. So it's not that we can only do one thing at a time, and it's nested, because if we're doing things correctly by meeting permit compliance, we should also be able to satisfy some of these other outcomes. It's just that by, for example, going after a renewable energy solution, it may not satisfy directly an activity that fulfills meeting permit, if that makes sense. So the other important thing here is that we're considering cost at every level of this hierarchy. So cost isn't shown because it's implied that we're always thinking about cost and what is manageable from a cost perspective. So little review and reminder, where did this project come from? We had it in the 2019 CIP, and it's also listed in our strategic plan under the environment pillar. So we're recognizing that it's very important for us to think about how we're using energy and managing it, and recognizing that the consumption of energy for operations has an environmental impact, and we want to make sure that we're using energy responsibly. So that's really kind of the basis for why we're thinking about all this at a very high level. So what is this management master plan? Well, it's a strategic study. It's a high level evaluation, so we're kind of taking the 30,000-foot view, and really we want to understand how to strategically replace aging infrastructure. We want to know how to improve the reliability and resiliency of our energy sources and how we use energy. We want to try to reduce energy demands and increase the use and generation of renewable energy. So that's what we're trying to figure out strategically and for the future. And our focus is the treatment plant, not the collection system or the pump stations. And the reason for that is that our intention is to include energy considerations for those areas in other projects. So we're focused on the plant because that's where a lot of the high level complexity is. So what isn't this effort? It's not a policy or a set of policies. It's not a set of actionable solutions, and it's not the path forward. We're not going to get to the end of this effort and have a report for you and say, this is what we must do in a certain way. It's going to present to us the landscape of what's out there and give us a sense of where the most benefit may be. And so the important thing to remember is that there isn't going to be enough detail in this project for us to go out and just do something. There will have to be follow-on projects to actually implement any of the recommendations that come from this study. So another reason we're doing this is because there's an opportunity right now. When we replace infrastructure, it's really only cost effective to seek a change at the time that we need to replace an asset because it's at the end of its useful life. Right now we have a lot of pieces of energy equipment that are nearing the end of their useful life. So that means that right now is a very good opportunity for us to think about how we could do things differently while we go through replacing assets anyway, to see if we can make some changes that help us advance our outcomes policies in these areas that I talked about before. So here's an actual output from the study so far, and this is just another way to sort of present that what I was just talking about. So the bottom portion of this figure is showing our current energy situation in terms of greenhouse gas emissions attributed to the energy that we use. So the lower right part of the figure shows the greenhouse gases associated with electricity that we purchase or fuel that we purchase. And the lower left is showing the greenhouse gas offsets that we're achieving by generating energy internally at the plant anyway from biogas usage or solar. And then the upper portion of the figure is showing the same things, but projected for the year 2040, so 20 years from now. And what this is telling us is that when we account for increased treatment demands by community growth and things like that, we will have a higher demand for power and therefore a higher production of pollution from the purchase and procurement of that energy. And our internal offsets will not be able to make up the difference. So in the future, we will be net purchasing more energy, which means more cost, and that will result in a greater greenhouse gas footprint on the environment if we just keep doing things the way we've been doing them. So this assumes that we don't make any changes. We just replace assets in kind. We just keep running the plant as we've always been doing it. And the important thing to note here is that, you know, there will be a need for more power in the future by virtue of needing to treat more waste. But what this is telling us is that things are maybe going in the wrong direction from where we would want to see them go, which is use less power, you know, use more renewable energy or offset more of our own power. So these are the things we're trying to think about. So what are the goals of the project? Well, as I've said already, we're trying to advance our district outcomes policies, and we want to do that by outlining pathways to replace aging infrastructure that give us opportunity to reduce costs, conserve resources, and reduce our footprint on the environment. And the plan will also be using established frameworks that seek continuous improvement so that we're able to demonstrate to you and to our customers that we're doing things in a way that's, you know, wise. And we also want to make sure that this plan identifies opportunities to add value to our ratepayers. The outputs from the project are going to include a couple things. First, we're going to try to quantify the status quo and future needs. Part of that figure I just showed you is what that means. So where are we now and where do we think we're going to be in the future? We're going to identify a bunch of alternative strategies that we might be able to employ to help advance our goals and policies. And we're then going to prioritize those alternatives based on their level of impact, complexity, and cost. And finally, we'll be developing some business cases that provide more detail and understanding of a subset of alternatives that we feel are going to have the highest value or rate of return for the district. So this project is organized into 4 phases. The first phase, we're casting a baseline and a vision. So, you know, saying where are we and where do we want to get to? Phase 2 is about identifying alternatives and trying to understand them at a high level. Phase 3 is understanding the regulatory and funding implications of these ideas. So if we make changes in the plant, does that change our need for an air permit, let's say, or other considerations for our water permits? And then what kind of funding opportunities might be out there? Are there grants available for different types of energy solutions, things like that, other incentive programs? And then lastly, are these phase 4 is this business case evaluation where we take a deeper dive into the alternatives that we think may provide the most benefit. So the way we're organizing things is we're starting at the top with a lot of information that's very general, not much detail, and we're trying to funnel down to things that are most promising and explore them in more depth, but still at at a relatively high level. We, as I said before, it won't be detailed enough where we can just go out and do something. So progress to date, we've completed phases 1 and 3. So we know where we are. We know kind of where we want to go. And we understand kind of the regulatory and funding considerations that we need to think about. And we're just wrapping up phase 2, which was all about brainstorming ideas and trying to identify different alternatives, ways that we could make beneficial changes here at the plant, and doing some high-level evaluation. And we're now just getting ready to move into phase 4, which is what we'll be focused on for the remainder of the work until next September. So now I would like to talk a little bit about metrics for understanding outcomes. So in the last session, you were talking about this a little bit, and so these are metrics that staff are planning to use internally for this project to understand how we can move alternatives forward that satisfy our outcomes. So we're kind of going back to this nested hierarchy, and we have kind of identified a number of evaluation criteria to help us understand if we are moving these 3 tiers of this hierarchy forward. So in the green, for permit compliance, we want to look at impacts to aging infrastructure. So are we addressing aging infrastructure needs through an alternative? Does the alternative impact our operations beneficially or negatively? Does it provide us flexibility or not? And does it impact our energy situation? For environment and public health and risk, we want to look at greenhouse gas footprint and maturity of technology. So risk is highly associated with maturity of technology. And then renewable energy, we want to look at energy impact. And you'll notice here that energy impact shows up twice. The reason for that is we're thinking about energy impact in different ways. So for permit compliance, it's more about how much total energy do we need and where are we getting it from. So it's all about how reliably can we get energy and how much of it do we need to have reliability to keep the plant running to meet permit and do a good job all the time. For renewable energy, the impact is more about how much renewable energy are we generating, how much energy are we self-generating internally, and how much renewable energy are we able to procure. So it's more about our energy makeup, not how it impacts the operations of the facility. And then the purple on the far right, synergistic benefits is the last criteria. And what that's really trying to do is help us understand how individual alternatives, if paired together, might give us added benefits. So if we make changes in a few areas at the same time, do we get an enhanced benefit as opposed to just doing them individually? So for example, we could look at replacing our biogas engines to make more power, and we're going to have waste heat from that. If we just do the engines, we would have to radiate that heat. If we also consider something like biosolids drying, where we need heat to dry the biosolids, if we just looked on that on our own, it might not look as promising, but if we paired those two together where we could use the waste heat from the generating system to dry the biosolids, that's a synergistic benefit. So that's an example. So our next steps, as I said, we'll be kind of working through phase 4 for the remainder of this project. The project's scheduled to complete in September of next year. We're proposing to come back and give the commission an update in the second quarter of next year and let you know how things are going. And then we'll also come back in the fourth quarter of next year once the project is completed and give you a rundown of what the project is suggesting we should think about for the future. And so then what does the future hold? Well, we'll be considering the recommendations from this project as we move into subsequent CIP efforts and future facility planning and design projects. So we now have 2 questions we'd like to ask you as the commission. So the first is there any portion of the study that the commission considers unacceptable and needs to be reconsidered? And the second question is the commission comfortable with the process pathway for involvement that I just showed on this previous slide? So I'd like to open it up to the commission now to provide some feedback on these 2 questions.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Very informative. Beth, I see your hand up.
Yep. I just want to make a comment. I fully support this. I think this is a no-brainer. I think that's something that I'm really happy to see that, you know, that you're moving forward with. This is terrific. So that is my overall comment. I'm just wondering what your overall goal is. You showed that slide with the business as usual. I'm wondering what your overall goal is for the footprint going forward. So what are you kind of aiming for? And then kind of a secondary to that is, what are other wastewater treatment plants doing in this area? And is there something that we can kind of learn from them, or are we kind of leading the way in this? So that's my question.
Those are some really good questions, and so thank you. And they're very complex, so I apologize if I can't give a fully satisfactory answer today. So you kind of had a 2-parter. What are we aiming for, and what are other facilities doing? Well, I'll start with the second one, which is what are other facilities doing? We have looked at what our peer facilities have been doing, and a lot of them are at a similar stage as we are, where they're studying their energy situation and they're trying to figure out, you know, what are the pathways to make improvements. Some of our peer facilities have made stated specific goals. So, for example, the city of Madison has a 100%, you know, renewable energy goal for a future year. Some of our peer utilities have done similar things. And in some cases, that's been simpler for them to do that because they've been contained within a larger municipal government structure like the city of Madison, but we're not, you know, contained within that type of governance structure. So we have to figure this out for ourselves. And we have not set any kind of specific outcome in terms of being 100% renewable by a specific year, or having a, you know, a certain percentage renewable makeup by a certain year. We've I think more been in the position of, let's understand what this study tells us so that we maybe don't set an unrealistic goal for ourselves that we then can't achieve. So then what are the specific goals? As I just said, we don't have a policy or a specific goal that gives us a target, but what we have been using, not only within this project, but other projects at the district, is we've been following the Envision sustainability criteria, and Envision is an industry standardized process that lays out different benchmarks for achievement, and Envision does include benchmarks for renewable energy use or greenhouse gas reduction, things like that. So we've been trying to understand our potential for improvement based on that framework. Does that help answer that question?
Okay, Grant, you're up, and then Ken.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple quick comments and a question. And overall, yeah, I agree with Commissioner Bookland. It looks great and very, very supportive of us prioritizing this work. One comment is I also agree with with Commissioner Bookland's comment about sort of setting a goal for ourselves at some point. And I agree, we should, there's no point in setting an unachievable goal, but I guess I think it's worth challenging ourselves to think about something like a 100% renewable goal, and understanding what a realistic time frame is one thing. But I think as we get to that stage where we're thinking about options and alternatives, I think it would be a helpful framing to set some sort of a framework like that we can evaluate and help guide our decision making at that point. Another comment was just, I think it's probably within your framework already, but just really investing in research around potential grants and incentives that are out there in this space. I know that's a pretty actively changing scenario, but just really keeping good tabs on what kind of programs or grants we could tap into related to this to help kind of drive our the alternatives that we're considering. And then my question was around, early on you kind of clarified this is focused on the plant, not the pump stations, that would be sort of taken in other initiatives. So, if you could share anything about kind of what those other initiatives are that will be focusing on the pump energy. And then I had brought up at a previous meeting this question of renewable energy as it relates to sort of fleet vehicles and that sort of thing. So is that, including like Metro Grow operations or shipping, transport, or other things that aren't sort of on the plant grounds themselves necessarily, or even things like employee travel and incentivizing carpooling and transit and biking and work from home, that sort of stuff. Is that in scope with this project, or is that in a different initiative, or just not something that we're taking up yet?
All very good questions. You had a number there for me, so I'll try to work down the list and help me if I miss any. So, researching grants and incentives, as I pointed out, that is a component of the project. So we are looking for that, not only, financial incentives or support programs, but also just alternative mechanisms for facilitating the business of a project. In terms of the pump stations and the collection system, the reason that's not being included is because we have ongoing projects such as our I&I reduction program, and I believe we have an upcoming collection system facility plan where that stuff will be understood in more detail. So things like energy reduction and management will be covered in projects where we look at individual pump stations for rehabilitation. How do we put backup power? How do we improve pump efficiency and pump controls at individual projects? And for I&I, it's how do we prevent water from getting in that we don't need to be there in the first place, so that, save energy from pumping less. So those are some examples of how we're covering those things in other efforts. And then for fleet vehicles, that is and associated energy, I think, is what you are kind of getting at. So the energy that comes along with doing business that isn't involved with actually running an asset at the plant. There are a lot of nuances and factors at play. So, in terms of employee travel, no, that's not something that is being included in this study. And part of the reason for that is because it doesn't show up on the district's budget sheet somewhere. But also one of the main focuses of this effort is trying to understand how to replace infrastructure at the plant. And so something like employee commuting isn't really contained within that scope. So it's important. It's just something that we'll probably be considering in parallel. And for things
could I jump in there just for a minute? This is Michael. I think with the fleet element as well, the commission, you may recall, you accepted the fleet management plan that used the same nested hierarchy that Matt shared with you, and outlines our a decision structure for using lower energy development options for replacing fleet vehicles. And at some point when this study is done, it might be worth revisiting that fleet management plan that we're implementing. Sorry, Matt.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Another thing that that isn't directly factored in is embodied energy. So, for example, if we need chemicals or new types of things at the plant, how much energy did it take to produce and deliver those supplies or materials? We're not considering that level of detail in the study because it's just too complex. It depends on who we're buying it from, where they're located, what we need today versus tomorrow. So that I'm kind of speaking for myself here, but to me, that's a procurement question. It has to do with our procurement code and understanding that when we procure things. So we have not gotten into that level of detail with this project. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, it does. And it makes sense that it's not, I mean, this is a huge project on its own, so it makes sense to have some pretty clear parameters for it. And maybe, I guess I'm not even aware, maybe we already have a sort of more overarching policy around this question that can kind of help ensure that in procurement decisions or in projects related to the pump system or in other spaces, that this is sort of, that it's always incorporated as one of the central themes in decision making. And if not, maybe that's something that we as a commission should be thinking about. And just in terms of a policy, I think it's a really critical question. And even just thinking about the work that we got an introduction to from Marty at a previous meeting around kind of resource management and Metro Grow and the future of what we're going to do. Like, I think energy should be one of the key considerations that we're evaluating in that process as well. So yeah. Thanks for this, and looks really great.
Okay, Ken, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Matt, feedback on your two questions. I think your focus is right on point with this, and I think Grant and Beth have asked good questions associated with what you've communicated today. I'm going to ask the renewable question a little bit different way, and this is kind of a 10,000-foot view question. Is there ever a possibility where the district is energy independent, where we create all the energy that we need and we don't have to rely on the overall grid unless there's an issue with that?
Very good question. So that's in part what we want to understand with the study. It's not a specific question, but it is something that we want to understand, which is how far would we have to go to do that? And so there are a number of different ways that we could approach that goal. It is something we're trying to understand, and so when we come back to you, that is something that we'll make sure to explain is what would it take to get there. I think what that information I showed you in the figure before tells you that we've got a road ahead of us if we want to get that far. And, so we could do that through generating energy in different ways. It might involve bringing in more feedstock from different kind of waste sources to produce more gas and things like that. And those are all things that we're planning on understanding to see how far we would have to go to meet that goal.
Okay. And I asked a question more from a stance of the district not having to rely on anyone else to operate, regardless of what's going on. And I think some additional feedback for you. I think the district has the right person working on this project. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Ezra, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Tom, and thanks, Matt. Question 1, nothing unacceptable or needed to be reconsidered from my standpoint. Question 2, I think the process pathway for this project looks great. The process pathway for commission involvement, I have some thoughts on, and maybe that goes beyond just this project. But we, first I'll talk about something that's in your scope, you know, and timeline. The visioning part, I don't, maybe would want to understand a little bit more what the vision component of this project looks like, because it strikes me that, you know, the end, if you're going to start with the end in mind, right, the end is a really important point to sort of clarify and know where you're going. And so some of these questions that have come up about what are our goals or that sort of thing, I don't know if the vision of this narrowly scoped project gets that broad or if it doesn't. But I just wonder about vision here and whether we should be talking about vision at some point along the process here, not you know, before you've set it in concrete. So I have that point. The second thing is, I think, you know, given what you said about what this isn't and where it isn't going to get to by the end, but then I hear where Commissioners Buckland and Foster are going. I think we need to work plan as a staff and a commission that once this is done, then the work starts of our deciding. You're gonna sort of evaluate the array of different options, but not come up with a recommendation, not come up with a specific pathway. It sounds to me like those couple of scope items fall on all of us next after this. And so let's plan for that when this is done in the fall of 2021, and for however long after that we need to work on it to get that job done. But our work is cut out for us, is what I'm understanding, in a major way, collectively between staff and commission after this really big lift is over. So that's my second thought. Again, it's about commission involvement, but really beyond the scope of this project, but sort of the stuff that this project tees up for us to tackle next. Mm-hmm. Your reactions, Matt, on both would be great. Thank you for all this good work.
Yeah, so what I heard there, Commissioner Meyer, was some comments on vision and future work plans. So for vision, the visioning exercise at the beginning of the project was more qualitative than quantitative. It was more about what direction do we want to be going in? So do we want to be thinking about producing more renewable power? Yes. Do we want to be thinking about how to reduce greenhouse gases? Yes. So it was more about a pathway and less about what the actual endpoint looks like, because that's what we're hoping the study will help us clarify. It's sort of helping us say, all right, here are the paths. We don't know what's at the end. Help us understand what's at the end. From the work plan perspective, so I think there's two things that are going to happen here. One, there are going to be recommendations that integrate really well into work we're already doing. So it's not going to be a creation of new work. It's just going to be guidance to help us do what we're already doing. So when we talk about addressing aging infrastructure, we already know we're going to have to talk about keeping the plant running. We already have projects in the CIP for that. We already have expenses in our operating budget to deal with asset replacement. This study is just going to help us inform those efforts that we already have going on. So it's really not about new work. It's just guiding existing things. But there will also be some recommendations for doing things maybe in a completely different way, and that are attractive enough that we might want to do them. And that will, I believe, manifest as new projects in the capital improvements plan. So again, I think it will still integrate within an existing structure of work that you already have. It's just you'll be talking about a new topic within it. Michael, you may have a different take on that, but that's my understanding of how the outputs from this will sort of fit into what happens in the future.
No, Matt, I think you did a nice job summarizing.
Okay. I had a couple. So Matt, I think you answered the question, but I was going to ask the process that we're using to evaluate the energy options, and it seems like it's the Envision process, which I agree with. And then I just want to make sure that we're consistent with everything that we do. And then I want to know, I don't know if this is important or not, but how are things, different processes interrelated, because we're going to be making, or the district is making decisions on the, say, the liquid treatment plant process right now. And we don't want to be making a decision there that might conflict with later decisions. So I'm sure you're trying to keep all of that in mind, but it's, you could get the law of unintended consequences. So I just want to make sure. Then a couple questions. What if we're thrown a curve by regulators? You've talked about, how you've gone through the regulation, but we have this whole PFAS thing that might come up and tell us that, oh, well, now we got to treat for this level. And that could change the whole treatment plant process that we have. And then you've mentioned that, or your one slide talked about the increase in energy use by 2040 was mainly related to our volume and loadings that are anticipated to increase. We've been kind of steady for years, but this might be a stupid question, but has anybody ever thought, are there ways besides I&I, are there other pre-treatment methods or other measures that can be taken upstream, at the, for pre-treatment or somewhere else to reduce those loadings that would then have a beneficial effect when we get the wastewater to us, that we're not having the high, that increased expense? And then let's see here. If we're going to be setting a kind of a goal or for what we want to try to reach, I don't know if we're going to be, my thought on this is I'm wondering if we're going to need another checkpoint between the, I think your next meeting was in like June or July, and then the last meeting that we had set up. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Yeah, very good job. Thank you.
Okay. Excuse me. So heard kind of three things. Traps, what are other ways we could do things out in the system, and checkpoints along the timeline of the project. So for traps, that is something that we're considering. Does a particular alternative really paint us in a corner? And, is that a level of risk that's acceptable or not? Or is an alternative flexible enough where if things do change from a regulatory standpoint, it's still something that we would be able to continue utilizing? So that's definitely a consideration that we're thinking about. For pollution prevention, that's an interesting one, and could go in a lot of different ways. So our assumption is that load and flow will increase in the future as population grows in the area. If we try to eliminate flow, that saves us pumping energy, and that's probably something that might be realistic through water conservation measures, but we've already been doing that for a while in the area, so there might not be huge gains there. In terms of load, how much pollutant is there in the sewage? That's a double-edged sword, because we actually are relying on the carbonaceous load as a fuel to produce biogas to offset energy at the plant. So by maybe reducing carbonaceous load, we sort of work against the goal of being able to self-generate. So that's a tough one. But things like nitrogen or phosphorus reduction would be very beneficial, but how you separate those constituent pollutants out would be challenging. Maybe a good example of something we're already doing that we want to do more of is chloride. So right now we don't have to treat for chloride, but we may in the future. If we do, there would be quite a bit of energy associated with that. So we've been trying to reduce chloride before it gets to us. And so we would, certainly want to continue aspects like that. So there's a lot of things going on there, and yes, we are thinking about them.
I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead.
Oh no, please, Michael.
I wanted to touch on briefly the regulatory piece, which I think is really important. You know, if we're thrown a curve by regulators, that's what you said, President Hovell. And you may recall 3 years ago, we received our first air permit, and the more energy we generate, the more we're at risk on the air permit compliance side of this. That we've been, as you know, we've been trying to grapple with. There's also issues with where our ultimate discharge would be, since we're a heavy energy. A lot of our energy goes into pumping, and while that's not part of the scope of this specific study, those are risk factors that we'll have to be looking at longer term with the commission.
Thank you, Michael. The last thing was with checkpoints. What I'm hearing, Commissioner Hovell, is that you're wanting to know if it would maybe be better to have an additional checkpoint in the interim somewhere.
Yes.
I think that's ultimately up to your comfort level. We're happy to do, keep you in the loop as much as you would like. My perspective on it is that from now until the end of the study, the consultant is basically just gathering information and churning out lots of charts and graphs. So there really aren't going to be a lot of decisions that are being made in that interim time. It's more about just gathering all the information that we want to understand based on decisions that are happening currently. So, we can certainly keep you abreast, but it's not like there's going to be a lot of new decisions, but certainly, we can give you a snapshot of what we've been learning to that point. And if, that is informative for you and helps you decide if you want us to maybe pivot a little bit, we can of course do that.
But my main comment, so maybe, there are a couple commissioners that brought up the idea of setting our goal. So, but maybe we set that goal after we receive the report and have had a chance to evaluate it, since, as you said, I think Ezra mentioned that too, we're not coming up with a roadmap at this point. You're coming up with a variety of options that we'll then use to set a roadmap. So maybe that can come later. I hadn't probably made that connection quick. Right.
President Hovell, I wonder if I could jump in here for just a
go
moment
ahead, Bill.
on this question. You've talked a little bit, all of you, about what happens after this study. And I really want to emphasize the point Matt made, which is this is essentially an options gathering and evaluation study. And when it's done, we have something that has always been difficult for the district, which is to take those options and turn them into real work. And this task is something we've actually been thinking about on my team a lot, about how do we bridge that gap between master planning and capital projects. And I think the discussion you're having about energy goals and that handoff, I guess I'm supporting the idea that somebody floated that we come back after the study is done and have some sort of commission level engagement on where the study goes after it's done.
Yeah, I would concur. That's going to be needed, because that, I think now, is what I'm understanding, is probably the point where we would set goals, and then you would have to figure out what are the best methods to meet those goals, or if we're able to, then how cost effective and how they rate out through that whole envision process.
And there was actually one other point I wanted to make, which is, this is very important from a strategic finance asset management point of view. This is an energy infrastructure study, and the real driver is significant concerns over the viability and path for infrastructure. So yes, energy goals are important, but we as staff are really focused on the infrastructure aspects of this work. That's what's scaring us, and that's what's driving us at the moment.
I'm sorry, that makes good sense, because you're adding infrastructure adds cost, and this cost of the purchase and the maintenance and everything else like that. And then to have to redo it later. Yeah. Okay, I don't see anybody else have hands up. Matt, do you have all the information that you need?
You've given me a lot to think about. Thank you very much. I just wanted to summarize, to go over, make sure I'm understanding your collective response to these questions. So, you know, is the study acceptable, and is there anything that needs to be considered? I'm not hearing that anything needs to be reconsidered, just maybe focus on some things. And in terms of, are you comfortable with the pathway that we laid out? Yes, you are, and very much looking forward to what comes out of this end of next year. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I think then we'll have to discuss, as Ezra mentioned and Bill, the point after the study, what do we do then? And how do we, what evaluation process do we set up for ourselves and for the staff? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Very, very good. Let me see here. That takes us to the CED update. Michael, we're on item 5A.
President Hubble, I do not have any specific updates this week.
Okay. So that will take us to item 5B. Paul, regulatory and legal review.
Yes, and this is the time we kind of review what we've done in terms of legal services for the prior month. And, you know, in addition to some general issues, I think we had quite a bit of regulatory issues going on with PFAS. There was a lot going on in the, you know, October timeframe. There was some website development with the district. We did some coordination with other major POTWs. There was review of NR 159 and the impact of the firefighting foam language on potential wastewater discharges. Then there was also the renewed interest by DNR on doing PFAS sampling at various treatment plants and working with the department on that to coordinate with the efforts the district is already undertaking. A couple of contract issues, the UW fiber optic cable relocation was a challenging issue. It's along that corridor Bruce has talked about before in Shorewood. And so we've been working to ensure that that's okay. There's ATC had asked for some revisions to easement language that ran through the plant, and we had to monitor that very carefully. Other than that, there was a few small annexation issues, I think, as you may recall, with McFarland that we took a look at. And there was one HR matter in terms of some disciplinary issues that we took a look at as well. So a relatively busy month, but I think we got through most of those items.
I would add, Paul, that we also conducted our first interest-based problem-solving meeting with the DNR this last week on the extension of disinfection with the key folks at the DNR and Paul and Marty Griffin, and we had a really it's facilitated by MATC. And I felt the meeting was very productive as we started to develop our interests of what we want to get out of a solution. I'm very optimistic moving forward. We have another, our second follow-up meeting scheduled for the first week in December. And we should be getting pretty close to figuring out, are we going to have a resolution to that or not? And Paul, I don't know if there's any other insights you have from that meeting.
No, I was going to mention that as well. It is, we will have a follow-up and kind of see where we go from there next week.
Okay, thank you for the update, Paul and Michael. That's very good to hear about your meeting with the DNR. I look forward to hearing probably December 17th what the next thing is. So Alan, are you going to do the October operations report?
Alan, you need to unmute, please.
Did you get that? Sorry.
We can see the screen, Alan.
Okay, you can see it.
Yep.
Looks good.
Oh, kind of threw me myself a curveball, I guess. So, good morning, commissioners. This is the November 25th O&M report. This is actually for October plant performance that we've done. You've got the full packet in the in your agenda handouts. I don't. It was a pretty boring month in that regard, so I don't know if there was anything I would direct your attention to from the packet materials. Looking at the resource recovery, the screen, or for the, excuse me, the performance screen. Again, CBD05 limits, our effluent limits were very low for the month. But there's no new limits on CBD05 versus BOD. We run that quite a bit lower. And so the plant performance is doing quite well. I will point out that October was the transition month where we turned off UV, October 16th for the last time. We talked about that last meeting. So we're actually doing, we initiated a process where for construction, we had to lower the flow through the level of the flow through the building. So what we're doing is bypassing, there's a channel, or think of it like a box culvert that goes under the building. So the flow from the treatment plant is actually passing now underneath the entire UV structure where they're doing work and coming out in the pumping wells. So that's what they're using to pump out to the treatment plant. So it's kind of an interesting setup of how that's designed. And so what that does though is it makes us, we have to watch our effluent DO a little bit closer. We get a little bit of an aeration effect as it cascades off of the UV systems. And so, we lose that when they're doing this construction period. So that's forced us to watch that just a little bit closer. So far, we've had no difficulties with that. It's actually going quite smooth, I think. Looking at ammonia is quite low as we'd expect. Phosphorus numbers have been good. Our last fecal numbers for the month of October worked out to 85. Our limit is 400. So we're well below the limit on the fecals. System made it to the finish line and was actually still had room to run. So it didn't actually collapse at the finish line. So chloride numbers are about what we'd expect this time of year. Suspended solids have been good. Do we have any questions on the plant performance for October? I'll switch over to the recovery for the our processes that we make. So struvite, we're again right on track for to make approximately the number we would normally make, what we've become accustomed to. Some of you that have been with the commission a little longer remember that we were running at a much lower production rate 4 or 5 years ago. We've kind of figured out how to run that system to get a little bit better production out of that. So we average just under 2 tons per day of struvite produced that we ship off site. So that is we're right on track to come in right around that 675 to 700 tons for 2020. Clean water, it's a little bit been a little bit drier year than we typically have. So this is a reflection of what we're actually coming to the plant and treating. Because it's been a little bit drier year, which I personally have been very thankful for from the standpoint of construction and how we're having to sequence plant shutdowns to accommodate that. But we're probably going to come in a little bit lower than, certainly lower than 2019, probably on the lower end of 2018 as well. I would anticipate we're going to be probably around in that 15 to 16 billion gallon range, just FYI. And that I think has been talked to a little bit previously. We just, part of our revenue does come from that. So, that's a little bit of a downtick there with lower flows. Biogas, we're right on track to be about right around 300 million cubic feet for the year. Metro Mix, we had a lot of operation early in the year. Most of this was done before March, and we haven't done anything with that since. So we've set kind of a record for total production of that centrifuge this year, but I don't know that we're going to have, we may not have any more operation in 2020. It really kind of depends on the demands of the biosolids program. MetroGo production, again, we're going to be a little bit lower than normal, but that's reflected by the higher amount that we sent to Metro Mix and then subsequently to landfill this year. because of the wet. It actually started a year ago with the wet fall and early shutdown of our land application program. This year's application for the MetroGrow, we actually, as of this morning, we're good until, very approximately speaking, we're good till approximately Memorial Day. So we're really in, compared to last year, we were kind of sweating it out at this point. This year, we're in really great shape where it's really hard to even envision a scenario that would be anything where we would have trouble in the spring, although I do not want to tempt the fates. And then reused effluent is just a factor of how much we're using for internal processes. Some of this, a significant amount that we've turned off here for some modifications. We just turned this off in the last week. So this number will probably come in closer to about 185. But that's basically because we're turning off some cooling water processes for sludge as part of the liquid processing project. So probably as much or more detail than you'd like, but if anyone's any questions or would like to go deeper, please feel free to ask.
Okay, anybody have any? Anybody have any questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Alan.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, that will take us to 5D, future meeting schedule. The next meeting is December 17th. And then future agenda topics. Any other business? If not, everybody have a good Thanksgiving, and we'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move we adjourn. It's Wilson.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson.
Second, Clark.
Second by Commissioner Clark to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Have a good
holiday.
Everybody stay
Thanksgiving.
safe, please. Stay safe.
Yep, stay healthy.
Happy Thanksgiving, all.
Yep, thank you.